how to onboard a new client and from start to finish. So from first getting them all the way until finishing their books at the end of the month and sending an invoice. Definitely subscribe to my channel, and a thumbs up is a huge compliment that you can give me. All right, so I kind of broke this up into 4 parts. The first one is kind of the initial interview. The second part is kind of a time of training. Then there is the initial kind of first couple months where you're ramping up, and then there's just the normal bookkeeping month-to-month work. All right, so all that is about the beginning training process, and then you just get into your normal routine bookkeeping, which is my favorite part. So usually I'll make a list just for myself of usually it's like 5 to 10 tasks I need to do. So first I need to input the checks, then I need to download all the transactions, then I need to worry about this little payroll thing, then I need to reconcile their bank account. So I have a list of what needs to be done. It does vary client by client, but basically usually it's inputting checks, categorizing expenses, figuring out their credit card transactions, and each bank account you need to categorize, input, reconcile. So it is helpful for me to kind of have just like a little checklist. So I have these 5 bank accounts, I've done this, this, and this for each one. If you're doing payroll, then you'll get a statement from the payroll company and you need to enter that in a certain way. I personally don't do manual payroll in QuickBooks, but if my client has a payroll company they're using, I'll get a report from the payroll company. And then any transactions that I can't figure out on my own, I will put into the Ask My Accountant category, and then I'll send my client a list of all of those transactions at the end of the month. And usually I'll do it in an Excel document so they can just write their answers in there. Like, this I bought from Target, it was a desk I bought from Target, so then I could put it into office furniture. So those are kind of the ongoing main bookkeeper tasks. And at the end of the month, of course, I'll reconcile, as I mentioned. So a lot of the bookkeeping tasks, the categorizing you can do week by week, especially if you have a client with a large amount of transactions. You might want to keep up on it as, each week, but then you reconcile once at the end of the month. You get the bank statement from the bank website, and then you reconcile the bank account. And then I always email the client their updated reports. So I always email a profit and loss. Sometimes I find it interesting to compare the last few months or compare it to last year. There's tons of different reports you can pull in QuickBooks. So I kind of think about what would give the owner an interesting or a helpful picture of their finances. So I don't know, recently I've been pulling like the last 3 months so they can see how their expenses this month compare to the previous few months. And then I sometimes send a balance sheet. That often isn't something they need every month. And also something that owners often like to see is their owner's draws. So if they are not a corporation, but they take distributions or owner's draws, then that doesn't show up on the profit and loss statement because it is an equity account. So you need to go to the balance sheet to get how much money they're taking home, how much money is going into their personal bank account. And my kind of drop dead date to give clients their reporting is by the 10th of the month. I usually try to get it significantly sooner than that, but often the statements are available on the 1st or 2nd, and then depending on my workload, it'll take me a couple days to kind of get everything settled in, and then the 10th is the absolute latest that I ever want to have the previous month's information to my new client. All right, so I send them the reporting, and then I also send them the invoice with my work hours. So like I said, if I'm doing it hourly, I'm putting my hours in every time I work, and then I can create an invoice. In QuickBooks, you create an invoice, you type your client's name at the top, and then because you've linked your hours to that client, it'll pull up, oh, you've worked 15 hours for this client, and then it'll say, do you want to add them all to your invoice? And you say yes. And then, so it creates an invoice for you, and then it totals up how much they owe you, and then I email that to my client as well. And typically right now, my clients are sending me paper checks. I think I've talked about that before. And so they will receive my invoice through email, they'll mail me a check, and then when I deposit it, I apply that payment to the invoice. Otherwise, you'll have a whole bunch of open invoices in your QuickBooks account. And then I also try to send them a receipt that says, I got your check. If you're just learning QuickBooks, all that might seem like a lot, but it really is very manageable. There's tons of tutorials online about how to make invoices, how to do all the things I just mentioned. Like I said, I don't really do QuickBooks tutorials at this point, but if there's a big need for that, that's something I might consider in the future. So definitely give me as much feedback as you want in the comments below. A couple quarterly or yearly tasks that I have to do. So at the end of the year, actually at the beginning of the next year, so every January, I send all of my clients' information to their accountant. So you can either invite the accountant to QuickBooks Online, or you can just pull a report and email it to the accountant. Kind of depends on what the accountant's preference is. And some clients also want me to check in quarterly about their tax payments, their quarterly tax payments. So if their income is fluctuating a lot, then it's possible that they might owe a different amount of taxes. It's not as common, but sometimes it is good to have those checks with the accountant periodically through the year to make sure that the amount of taxes the client is paying quarterly are correct. And then of course I'm always available for phone calls with my clients or Zoom calls. Sometimes they'll want to talk about, strategies or holes, or because I'm so close to their books, I often form opinions about, where they could be more efficient, or maybe this vendor is charging too much, or their advertising budget is too high based on how much it's bringing in to the business. So I'm not an accountant and I'm not a tax preparer, so I don't have credentials that allow me to give certain advice, but just as a person who's smart, who's looking at their finances day in and day out, I am able to just be kind of a business advisor and a help to the owner. And another task you can do annually is a budget, so make an annual budget. The two clients I've had that want me to make budgets were both nonprofits. I think they have to make budgets as part of their shareholder meetings and stuff. But you can make a budget in QuickBooks and you can compare it month to month. You can see, oh, I'm this much over budget and this much under budget. So that's like a whole nother thing you can work on as well as just any loose ends that you see that you might want to tie up. So maybe there is a check that never got cashed. They wrote out a check, but the person never put it in their bank. So just give them a heads up about that. Or invoices, open invoices. If they have tons of open invoices from this certain one of their clients that haven't been paid. If they have a lot of money waiting to be collected, like that's something you have visibility to, that would be helpful for the owner to know, or your boss to know. Sometimes being a bookkeeper seems almost simple, like it's hard for me to really express to people everything that I'm doing for the business, but just laying it all out like that was actually really helpful for me, because I'm like, there is a lot of things that you do as a bookkeeper. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys as well. And if you guys have made it to the end, definitely hit the subscribe button because you are a rock star. Blah, 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 blah.